will apply there? Yes. Now here what happened was, the first issue which was discussed was in relation to how to interpret. Whether in relation to would only imply direct expenditure or indirect expenditure. When you are trader in shares, can you tell me what are the direct expenditures? The direct expenditures are demand charges, brokerage. Now, is brokerage expenditure? I will come to that. Because brokerage is the cost of the shares. So, in relation to whether it will include all direct and indirect expenditure, that was the decision taken by the majority. But the dissenting member said no, in relation to mean dominant and immediate connection. So, one member was saying it will only include dominant. The one member was saying that only direct expenditure can be disallowed, and the second member was saying no, even indirect expenditure is disallowed. What can be the indirect expenditure? Common interest paid, common office expenditure, those are all indirect expenditure. So the one member said that even indirect expenditure can be subject matter of disallowance, but one member said no, direct expenditure can be subject matter of disallowance. The one member was saying it is for the assessee to show that what is the direct expenditure incurred, what is the second member said no, it is for the department to prove. So again there was difference in the opinion. The third member said, the third issue which was it will apply on the dealer in shares, and the second member said no, it will not apply to the dealer in shares. So the matter when it was referred to the third member, the decision which was taken here was in relation to mean dominant and immediate connection. So it means even common business, common administrative expenses will be subject to disallowance. It is for the AO to establish that the expenditure incurred for earning exempt income. So AO2, the burden was shifted to the AO, and dealer in shares also. Now the onus was on assessee. So the common view was the onus on the assessee, and the third was it will be applicable to dealer in shares. As I said just now, after this judgment, there is no scope because trader in shares, everyone was covered, even indirect expenditure get covered. It was the assessee to prove what is not direct expenditure. So this judgment was very, very alarming, and lot of assessees had a nightmare after the judgment had come. Then we find a judgment of Hero Cycles, which was passed on 4th November 2009. It was some days afterwards, and in Hero Cycles case, Daga capital judgment was not referred. So what happened in Hero Cycles case? The company had invested in shares in subsidiary company long time back when it had its own funds. Over the years it got bonus. In that instant year, the company had a lot of loans, but it received dividend to the tune of 3 crore rupees. Amount appearing in the investments was only 1 crore rupees. It received dividend of 3 crore rupees. The assessee argued that I have all the investments in subsidiary companies, and no loan has been borrowed for investment in shares from where dividend has been received. So there should not be any disallowance. So I repeat the thing. In Hero Cycles case, what happened was the assessee had made investments in the past when there was no loan, and there was investments only in subsidiary companies which does not require any administrative expenses to control. And the assessee argued that there cannot be any disallowance because neither any administrative expenses are involved nor any interest has been paid, because when I made the investments, at that time I had no loans. And Punjab and Haryana High Court said correct, no disallowance called for. This gave a lot of relief to the assessee, because if the assessee could have proved that no expenditure had been incurred, then no disallowance was called for. But this judgment had not referred to the Daga Capital's case. Then the third judgment came in between, that was Walford case. It was in the context of dividend stripping. Now, those who are not aware of dividend stripping, what happens in dividend stripping? You purchase the shares of a company just before the record date, get exempted dividend. After the exemption, after you get the dividend, the share prices fall. You sell the shares. There is a loss in the sale of shares. which you adjust with your other income, and dividend is exempt. Now, in order to curb this practice, section 94(7) was inserted in the statute book, which says that if you purchase the shares just before the record date and sell the shares, then you will not be getting exempt income. The loss will be adjusted with your exempt income. You have to hold the share, purchase the shares at least 3 months before the record date. Now, in Walford case, the SECI had done huge dividend stripping, and the question arose whether first question arose whether 94 subsection 7 is retrospective or prospective, because the SECI had done the transactions of dividend stripping prior to insertion of 94 subsection 7. And the second question arose, even if it is a prospective, then section 14A disallowance will arise, because you are earning the exempt dividend, and for exempt dividend you have suffered loss in sale of shares, so that has to be adjusted. The matter went up to the Supreme Court, and this is a very important judgment. First of all, this judgment laid down a principle very clearly that dividend stripping 94(7) cannot be applied retrospectively. Since I am not discussing 94 subsection 7 here, I am not going deep into this issue. The second issue which was discussed here was what is expenditure. That was very importantly discussed, and here the difference between expenditure and payback was discussed. For the first time, the difference between expenditure, payback and cost of acquisition were discussed. What is the difference between expenditure and cost of acquisition? I was asking just some times back, if a brokerage, if the SECI is a share broker and pays brokerage, is it expenditure or is it a cost of acquisition? Now, in this particular judgment, it has been held that you have to identify the differences between cost of acquisition and the expenditure, direct expenditure. And it said that whatever I am purchasing the shares, that is not expenditure, that is cost of acquisition. And it said that section 14 capital A applies only on expenditure. It does not apply on cost of acquisition. It means if I have got dividend income and I have suffered loss in trading in sale of shares, loss in trading in sale of shares cannot be said that that expenditure has been incurred for the purpose of earning exempt income, because whatever loss I have suffered in trading in shares, that exactly is not an expenditure. If you look after the judgment, that is actually a cost of acquisition of the shares. Some days back I got a brief for filing an appeal. It was a case of a non-banking finance company, and I found that in that case the SECI had some purchases of sale of shares, wherein it had earned a profit. Purchase of shares, sale of shares, it had earned a profit. It had paid a huge amount of interest. The assessing officer computed disallowance under Rule 8D. What the SECI did was, whatever STT was paid, whatever transaction charges was paid, it had debited into the PL account. And the assessing officer said direct expenditure incurred for earning exempt income. So whatever STT was paid, whatever transaction charges was paid, he disallowed everything. My dear friends, that is not the concept of Rule 8D. But why the SECI did a mistake? He was not required to show STT separately as expenditure, because that becomes an integral part of cost of acquisition. And second, even if he has shown it separately, the assessing officer is not required to go into it, because that becomes, if we follow Walford case, that is not required to be adjusted as expenditure, because that becomes a part of cost of acquisition. So here in this case, some principles, landmark principles were laid down. First, that there is a difference between expenditure and cost of acquisition, and the proximate cause is required for disallowance section 14A, and payback offset. So with this, it said that yes, it will also cover indirect expenditure also. This is one judgment which came up, which said that it will cover indirect expenditure, but when you consider the expenditure, don't consider the cost of acquisition. Now the judgment came was Godrej and Boyce, Bombay High Court on 12th of August. It laid down a very important principle, my dear friends. A lot of officers are saying that this is a judgment which is against us, because it says both direct expenditure and indirect expenditure can be subject matter of disallowance. But this judgment has laid on a very important principle, that is Rule 8D cannot be mechanically applied. So satisfaction of the AO is very important. Unless the AO is satisfied that my calculation of disallowance under Rule 8D is incorrect, he cannot make any decisions. And this judgment was followed in Jindal Photos case. So where we are, let me come to understand whether you have really understood what I have given the judgments. Let me come to case study number 2. Can you open case study number 2? Dividend income 1 crore, exempt income, exempt long-term capital gains 5 crores, interest expenses 2 lakhs, other expenses 23 lakhs, average invest. So the company has only one income. The company entire business is getting a tax-free income. It is getting a dividend income and it is getting a long-term capital gains. The company is planning its affairs in such a manner that its entire income is exempt. Now, it has interest expenses of 2 lakhs and other expenses of 23 lakhs and average investments in 100 crores. Now, what will be the disallowance under Rule 8D, my dear friends? Half percent of average investments? Yes. Under Rule 8D23, how much will be the disallowance? So, half percent of 100 crores comes to how much? 50 lakhs. Is it right? Yes or no?
No.
Why not?
Total expenditure will be.
Yes. So one thing which say a lot of assessing officers, I have found some judgments wherein the total expenditure. See, I have seen just some days back also I saw a judgment. The same judgment which I am talking about the finance company. The finance company had administrative expenses of only 20,000 rupees. It had paid STT charges and brokerage charges or STT charges and transaction charges of 20 lakh rupees. So the total expenditure claimed by the assessee was 20 lakhs rupees on account of STT and transaction charges and 20,000 rupees only for the administrative expenses, filing fees, audit fees, whatever it is. The assessing officer first what he did in Rule 8D21, he disallowed the entire 20 lakhs. When he calculated Rule 8D23, then he applied total formula, what is the total investments in shares or inventory of shares, half percent of that. And he came to a disallowance of 2 lakhs. The simple question is, if you have disallowed the entire direct expenses, can you disallow more than 20,000 rupees? So my dear friends, what I am trying to mean, under Rule 8D, we have to be very clear that the disallowance under Rule 8D cannot exceed the amount of expenditure claimed. And if any expenditure is subject matter of disallowance, any expenditure is already disallowed or allowed as per Rule 8D21, then that cannot be subject matter of disallowance again in Rule 8D23. So, this example, the disallowance will be 25 lakh rupees. What will happen? Case study number 3, what will be the disallowance? Yes? Simple. 1 lakh. So, and some officers, some assessing officers do not feel that Rule 8D is like a Bible to them, and they want to say, हमें एक जजमेंट तो दिखाओ कि जहाँ पे लिखा है कि एक्सपेंडिचर से ज़्यादा डिस्काउंट नहीं हो सकता है. So for the sake of this class, for the sake that some officers do make a mistake, with due respect to the assessing officers, and you don't take it on a personal level.
I would like to point out one thing at this point. Let's understand the difference between depreciation and expenditure. Many assessing officers are also disallowing depreciation under Rule 8D or Railway Section 14A. Depreciation is an allowance, it is not an expenditure, and what can be disallowed under Section 14A is only the expenditure, not an allowance. Depreciation is the right of the assessee. whether the assessee claims it or he does not claim it, it will be granted to them. So, if any assessing officer while computing Rule 8D disallows any portion of depreciation, it is blatantly banned in law.
Yes.
This is what I want to make at this point.
Yes, sir. So, you can write this judgment because sometimes some officers are very clear that I will make disallowance as per Rule 8D. This judgment is very clear that disallowance under Rule 8D cannot exceed the amount of expenditure which have been claimed. So if no expenditure have been claimed, there cannot be any disallowance. And that disallowance can only be with respect to the proportionate, the individual expenditure. Or if there are direct expenditure, that cannot be subject matter of disallowance under Rule 8D. Now, one question which is often being asked here is, if one assessee is into real estate and it makes investment in special purpose vehicles, let us take an example. One company is engaged in the manufacturing of CD, DVD, and there is another company which has formed a wholly owned subsidiary for the purpose of manufacturing solar voltaic cells, and it has made a lot of investments in the second company. The solar voltaic cells unit, the company will be, the entire income is exempt because of some special incentives given by the government. So that solar voltaic cell company, its entire income is exempt, and the main company is dealing into the CD and DVD and also has made investments in a special purpose vehicle. The main company is charging 3% commission, 3% income from the subsidiary for giving its technology. It is charging 3% of the sales as the technology charges. It had borrowed loan for the purpose of making investments in subsidiary. My question here to you is, in these kind of cases wherein I have made investments in subsidiary not for the purpose of earning exempt income in the form of dividend, or I will not be getting exempt income because that subsidiary is not a listed company. So if at all I am selling the shares of that subsidiary company, I will be chargeable to long-term capital gains which is taxable. And I am getting taxable income because of those investments in the form of 3% sales. But that 3% is much less than the interest paid by me, by the parent company. My first question here is whether this allowance under Rule 80 will arise here or not. Yes or not? Yes? Anyone with no? Now there is a long time back, there was a Calcutta High Court judgment in Rajiv Lochhan Kanodia. It said that if you are making investments in subsidiary, if your business is to make investments in subsidiary or any other things, your purpose of making investment is a business interest, then the interest paid is allowable. Then we have a judgment of Supreme Court in SA Builders case, wherein the Supreme Court held that if you are making investments in 100% subsidiary from where you are getting a business advantage, then whatever interest is paid, that is allowable business expenditure. Now we find some judgments and which says like this. Before I come answer to my question, this particular question, I am asking a third question here. If I have made investments in a partnership firm, from where I am getting share of profit as well as I am getting interest, whether disallowance under Rule 8D will arise or not. Yes, let me come to a simple example now. In a partnership firm, I have made investments from where I am getting share of profit which is exempt and I am getting interest which is taxable. My question first here is whether Rule 8D will arise or not. Yes? Yes, answer? Yes or not? Now, one thing is very important here is that there is two judgments which are very important here. One is Novel Enterprises and second is Vishnu Anant Mahajan. When we talk about the investment in partnership firm, The novel enterprise judgment says that if I am getting a taxable interest and exempt income, then no disallowance under Rule 80 is called for. On the other hand, Vishnu Ananta Mahajan, there was a special bench decision in which it was said that the assessee argued that partnership firm is already paying tax. So whatever share of profit I am getting, it is not exempt actually. But same principle also applies for dividend also, because there is a dividend distribution tax. So here it was said that no, if the assessee is a partnership firm from where you are not getting any interest, then Rule 80 will arise. And then, so the difference here is that if I am getting both taxable and non-taxable income, and in partnership deed, if it is mentioned, this is a very important thing of tax planning. In a partnership deed, if it is mentioned that, and this was the principal letter in novel case, that if in the partnership deed is mentioned that, if it is nowhere mentioned that share of profit was dependent on contribution of funds, so then 49 is not applicable. Which generally no partnership deed have this clause, that you will not get a share of profit unless you contribute the funds. So, prima facie, if I am getting share of profit as well as I am getting interest, then disallowance under Rule 80 is not called for. And as I was directly pointing out, with respect to depreciation, again, the view of that is supported by Ahmedabad special bench decision in Vishnu Anant Mahajan case, that said that depreciation is an allowance and not an expenditure, and 14A will not apply on depreciation claimed by the assessee. So where we are now, we are the same principle with respect to partnership firm will also apply to investments made in a special purpose vehicle. Now, one question which is often being asked: if I have not received any exempt income during the year, will Rule 80 will apply?
Yes.
Now, I have made entire investments in unquoted shares, and unquoted shares will never, when I sell the shares, what I will get? Taxable income, because I am not getting 1038 benefit when I sell unquoted share. And as you are aware, most of the 99.99% of unquoted shares do not ever give the dividend. This is a very, very known fact. Now, if those investments are not capable of earning or generating exempt income, can, for investments in unquoted shares from wherein I have not received any exempt income, can a disallowance in the Rule 80 will arise or not?
No.
Now, they are capable of generating this, what the assessing officers are generally saying, that they are capable of, because tomorrow the dividend may be declared. 99.99% okay, they are not declaring dividend, but they are capable of generating dividend, so we will disallow it. So what generally I prefer and I advise my clients, let us have a board resolution that if you are making investments, we will not give you any dividend. And when I appear before the assessing officer, says that these are the copies of board resolutions, these companies are not, will never declare any dividend, because they have, when I made investment, they have made it very clear that they will not give any dividend for 10 years. So for 10 years, they cannot do any disallowance under 40K. Fair enough. So but if no dividend can be declared by those companies, so what happens here is we can only get a taxable capital gains, and so Rule 80 disallowance is not arise. So what if no income earned? There is a CAM Invest judgment which says that even if there is no income, a special bench decision is there, disallowance should be made under Rule 14A. Same thing has been laid down in Walport case. But, and again, very recently, CBDT has issued a circular. Those who are practicing in the income tax department must be aware of that circular. On 10th of February 2014, the CBDT came out with a circular. And again, they have laid down an issue that a controversy is arising in certain cases as to whether disallowance under Section 14A can be made, even in those cases where no income has been earned by the assessee which has been claimed exempt during the financial year. The expenses which are relatable to earning of exempt income have to be considered for disallowance irrespective of fact that no income has been earned during the financial year.
The board resolution you talked about right now. So that board resolution is ultra high as the Companies Act.
Sorry?
That board resolution is ultra high as the Companies Act.
No, see what happens. It is very common, it is not ultra vires, why I tell you. Because in many cases wherein you are availing loans, the company which are availing loans, they are giving a declaration to the banks that till the loan is repaid, they will not declare any dividend.
See, even in that case.
That is
They will not repay the unsecured loan.
They will not repay the unsecured loan.
They will not repay the unsecured loan.
Even for dividend also I have seen some banks raising a condition that you will not pay any dividend.
No, that is not possible. We have never. We have never seen.
If you consider passive equity then,
Sorry?
if you consider passive equity then,
No. If there is a lock-in for the purpose of dividend, because my next presentation is with respect to deemed dividend, where I will raise one very important issue of tax planning with respect to deemed dividend. There again I will raise this issue. If you are saying that it is ultra vires the Companies Act, can you tell me which section of the Companies Act is violating?
See, the Companies Act, the companies is primarily formed for the purpose of dividend distribution in the form of dividend distribution to the members, right? Now, if you are the board, wherein all the members are not the members of the board itself, so the few members, they are containing the power that is for the purpose of which dividend is being, for the purpose of which the companies has been formed in itself.
No.
The minority shareholders are going to be affected.
See. I am talking about private limited company.
It is
In a private limited company, there are closed unit play persons, and the purpose of private limited company was not to give dividend, but to get a long-term growth. And it happens in a lot of joint venture agreements that it is being declared that no dividend will be declared. See what happens? Let me give an example. Suppose there is a private limited company which has been formed. Somebody invests in a fully convertible debentures.
Sir, SPV is a different ballgame.
So let us discuss this part later on. See, because this is going to take the class to the Companies Act level. Now the CBDT circular talks about that section 14A does not use the word income of the year but income under the Act. And thus it is clarified that Rule 8D read with section 14A provides for disallowance of the expenditure even where transaction in a particular year has not exempt income. So it says that even if there is no exempt income in a particular year, you are required to make a disallowance. And now with this particular circular in hand, most of the assessing officers are applying randomly in all the cases. Rule 80 is applicable, and so even if you have not earned any exempt income, even if you have made investments in a private limited company, they are taking resort of this CBDT circular. Now, once this CBDT circular has come, then I was trying to locate some judgment wherein this CBDT circular has been discussed, because this judgment has come just in 2014. So I was just trying to find out that, let me find out some judgment wherein this judgment has been discussed and tribunal has ruled in favor of the assessee, and I could find out one judgment, that is M. Bhaskaran, ITT Chennai, which held that CBDT circular and CAM by judgment is not a good law. Then we have find different High Court judgments, Allahabad High Court judgments, in Shivam Motors case, Kotak Energy, Gujarat High Court judgment, Lakhani Marketing, Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment. All these judgments have held that if you have not earned any exempt income, the disallowance under section 14A will not arise. But my dear friends, we have to be very, very careful while giving submissions. Now, the most important issue to be discussed was whether 14 capital A would apply on a stock in trade. See, what happens when such is a dealer in shares, securities, they are having a 5 crore rupees, 10 crore rupees as income from trading in securities, and they receive a nominal amount of dividend. And quite often it happens that out of the dividend they have received, a lot of disallowance comes under section 94, subsection 7. What is that? Dividend stripping. Because if you are dealer in shares, you don't hold the shares. You purchase the shares, you sell the shares, and in the process, you might not be holding the shares for 3 months period. And then 94(7) comes into the picture, and then disallowance arises. Now the question here comes up is, for a dealer in shares, whether 14 capital A would apply or not. So the first judgment on that issue was Leena Ramachandran's case, Kerala High Court, 339 ITR, which said that in this case what was happening was the assessee borrowed the money for investment in shares for acquiring 90% stake, and it relied upon the Supreme Court judgment of Asset Builders case, which said that if you are making investments in subsidiary and taking a loan, then that interest is allowed. The Kerala High Court, while passing the order, this case was not with respect to dealer in shares, this case was with respect to investor in shares. But while passing the order, the court referred to the dealer in shares, and it said that Asset Builders case is not applicable because you have not received any other benefit. So Asset Builders apply only when, I gave an example of CD unit and the solar voltaic where you get 3% or some, or if you talk about investment in partnership form where you get an interest or you get a technology fees. So if you get some taxable, merely because you have made an investment and if you don't receive any taxable income from those activities, then SA Builders case will not apply. So this is what has been held in this judgment, that SA Builders will apply only when your investment in subsidiary is giving you some taxable income. And then it held that section 36(1)(3) is applicable. So you are entitled to stock in trade. If you are stock in trade, then you are entitled to 36(1)(3). But if you have made investments, you are not entitled to 36(1)(3). So it means, it says that 14 capital A in a way would not apply on stock in trade. It says that when you are stock in trade, then you are entitled to. So in a way, it said that section 36 subclause 1 subclause 3 is overriding section 14A. This is the crux of the judgment. Then the second judgment came up. That was the Kerala High Court judgment. The second judgment came up Delhi High Court in Maxop investment case. And in this case, it was held that yes, it will apply on stock in trade of shares. 14A will apply. Then we find a Karnataka High Court judgment in CCI Limited case, wherein it was held that no expenditure was incurred for earning exempt income, no disallowance. So 14A on stock in trade, 14A disallowance will not apply. So now we have three High Court judgments. Kerala High Court, Lina Ramachandran case, it says that no disallowance. We find Karnataka High Court in CCI case, we say that no disallowance. We find Delhi High Court judgment in Maxop case, we say disallowance will be there. Then we find Calcutta High Court judgment in Dhanuka and Sons case. But Calcutta High Court judgment was prior to Rule 8D, and it says that yes, on stock in trade also 14 capital A will apply. So we have different view of different courts. With these four judgments, we find a lot of tribunal judgments coming day in and day out. And it is very important for us to understand. I will try to refer to some of the tribunal judgments to make you understand why that judgment was given in which context and how to deal with those judgments, even if it is against us. Now we find first of all Mumbai ITT judgment in Yeti's trading case. We said that own funds is sufficient, so no disallowance of interest. Now, I have learned from sir in the past also that in one case, if you really want to avoid a disallowance under 14 capital A, then you make investments in exempt instruments when you have no loan. So then there cannot be any disallowance under Rule 8D22, because if there was no loan on that day, there is no question of disallowance under that section. So what I am trying to mean here is one very important argument which can always be laid down by you is that when you made the investments, whether you had your own funds or not, if you have own funds, there cannot be any disallowance under Rule 8D22 on account of interest. And this has been held by Bombay High Court in Reliance Utilities case. Then Britannia Industries in Bombay and SDFC. So we have different views. We say that when you are having your own funds, then disallowance under 14 capital A may not arise at all. So Yeti's trading said that if you have own funds, then no disallowance. Then again, there was a Prakash Sal judgment, Mumbai ITT, where Yeti's case was followed and no disallowance was called for. Then there is a Gulshan investment case. Now Gulshan investment case was a unique judgment. It said that when you are trading in shares, there has to be disallowance under Rule 8D. But you can make a disallowance under Rule 8D21 when you are trading in shares. But you cannot make any disallowance for Rule 8D22 or Rule 8D23. It means no disallowance is required on account of interest paid, no disallowance is required for account of administrative expenses, but if any direct expenses has been incurred for the purpose of